Hi and good afternoon, everyone. I am Nathan Season, the coordinator of the FEU Career and Placement Office. Welcome to another round of Pep Talk, the Pre-Employment Preparation Talk webinar series. This is already our sixth episode. Pep Talk is a regular virtual series designed to prepare the graduating students for employment by equipping them with all the necessary knowledge and skills through talks touching on various topics delivered by industry professionals and experts. And on your screens now, you can see our previous Pep Talk webinars. You may rewatch them on your most convenient time at the Career and Placement official Facebook page or the FEU official Facebook page. Today's webinar is being live streamed via Microsoft Teams. We are also live via FEU and the CAPO official Facebook pages. So to participate in our question and answer part later this afternoon, you may submit your comments and questions anytime at our conversation page, which can be found at the right side of your screen if you're using a desktop, or at the live Q&A tab if you're using a mobile phone or other portable device. We usually associate the culmination of our undergraduate studies upon finishing our degrees in universities, right? However, for some courses, the journey does not end there. Taking the board exam is a requirement in order to secure a license and practice professionally. That is why for today's pep talk, our topic is all about coping with the new normal and test preparations. So please stick with us until the end of the program because you will surely learn a lot. And by the way, I'd just like to remind everyone to please make sure that your microphones are on mute, especially during the lecture proper, to avoid causing any unnecessary noise. So thank you for your cooperation and enjoy the rest of the program. And now, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I would like to call on the Director of the Career and Placement Office to give her opening remarks. Please welcome to your screens Ms. Maria Carmencita Beusuva Alfonso. Ma'am, the screen is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nathan. Our distinguished speaker, our Vice President, Sir Joven Castro, our deans, faculty members, students, and co-employees, good afternoon, and thank you for taking a time out of your busy schedule to join us today. The recent academic year showed us a preview of how things will be even after the pandemic, where many might be able to cope with easily, some may endure hardships. As we shift to a new paradigm, adapting to the so-called new normal will largely depend on how prepared we are, especially our graduates. With this, the FEU Career and Placement Office, or CAPO, has designed a 13-part series webinar to give the students the basics of working, finding a job amidst the new normal. We have also prepared and migrated online all other CAPO activities designed to help prepare our graduates for the new world of work. Online mock interview and coaching last July, the ongoing online exclusive recruitment, student exposure to industries, to name a few. We shall be posting all this in the official FEU social media sites and Canvas. So please check out our event posters and calendars. Let me show you a short video clip of a CAPO's lineup of activities for the rest of the year. Audio. Okay, there seems to be a technical problem. We will have to play the video again with the audio. Okay, hold on. Anyway, while waiting for the video, ayan na. There it goes. Okay, we're having some technical problems, no? We'll play the video later. So, for our sixth episode, titled "Coping with the New Normal," coping with the new normal in test preparations, we are grateful to be joined by no less than the company CEO of the successful Rey Gapuz Review Center. I am sure his valuable insights will be very helpful to you, our dear graduates. The tips on how to adjust in taking the board exam during this new normal will be a great help to those preparing to secure for their PRC licenses. Capo believes that this topic should be discussed to prepare our graduates and give them a better perspective of the world they are facing, one that is no longer the same as it was a few months back. And while it is not going to be easy to sort out the challenges in this new paradigm that we are in, always remember the mantra, be brave, because Tamaraos have always been resilient to whatever comes our way. And now, without further ado, allow me to introduce our speaker, Dr. Rey Gapuz. Rey A. Gapuz, or Mentor Rey, as he wants to be called, is an international author and multi-awarded digital entrepreneur. He graduated cum laude from the University of Santo Tomas College of Nursing for his bachelor's degree and is a board top-notcher in the Philippine Nursing Licensure Exam, where he obtained a rating of 89.20. He pursued his master's degree in nursing in the same institution and graduated summa cum laude. He pursued a post-baccalaureate certificate and master's degree in education in one of the top universities in the United States, the Pennsylvania State University. O, diba? Big time. He finished both courses with a GPA of 4.00. He is a recipient of 2 doctorate degrees, honoris causa, from 2 state universities in the Philippines, the Pangasinan State University and the Ramon Magsaysay State University. Mentor Rey is the first Filipino nurse to author books for international publications for Mosby, Elsevier, and Jones and Bartlett, USA. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to your screens, Mr. Rey Gapuz. Good afternoon, sir, and thank you so much for being here. The screen is now yours.
Thank you very much for the very kind introduction, Madam. And it's my pleasure to be joining all of you guys today. And I think the introduction is actually longer than my talk. No, just kidding aside. Okay. I'd like to address everyone as fellow learners, because in the new normal, the teacher and the learner role are already fused, such that at certain points, we fluctuate from that of being a teacher and from that of being a learner. So within the context of test preparations, gone are the days that you would still need a reviewer, a professional reviewer, right in front of you to discuss everything that you need to know. That's not the new normal when it comes to test preparations. And what we're going to have today is actually an eye-opener that would enable us to discover certain things within ourselves and within our environment that will enable us to reach our goal. That is definitely to bring home the top-notch spots for your alma mater. And I'm here to share with you my personal experiences and some helpful hints so that you can achieve your goal. Next, please. So then the first question that I'd like to pose to everyone, next slide, please. Are you ready for professional practice? So if we talk about being ready, the first thing that comes to mind is that before entering into the job market, you first have to ensure that you are already licensed, a licensed professional. I remember that's actually the initial advice I got from my mom. Sabi ng nanay ko, tapusin mo na anak lahat ng exam. And if you ask me, how many professional licensure exams I've taken? Okay, I've taken the Philippine licensure exams. After that, I took the CGFNS. Then I got myself certified in 4 different states in the US, got myself certified in the Middle East, in KSA, and in UAE. So name it, talk about professional licensure, I got it. So the key point is, yung iba takot mag-exam. Ako naman, that's my life. I consider it as nourishment for my academic soul. Anyway, kung lahat tayo takot mag-exam with the new trends in the new normal. This is going to be fun, and that's what I'd like to show to you as we move along. Next, please. So with the present pandemic, can you imagine being in a class like this while doing your test preparations? Very claustrophobic. Next, please. And meet like this. If you have a tutor, this is kind of high-tech, but still claustrophobic. And next, please. Even PE classes are now done in protective bubble suits. Next, please. And they play like this. See? A lot of things have changed. Next, please. Why would you go through those difficult situations when you can have a class like this while doing your thing early in the morning? Don't raise an eyebrow. I actually did this once because I was in India and the place I was in was actually too noisy. I didn't have any choice. So I went to a hotel, went directly to the restroom, opened my cell phone, sat on that thing and connect to my professors doing our classes in the States. So if that is possible now, definitely it's gonna be a part of the new normal as you prepare to take your licensure test. Next, please. You can even multitask if you want to do this side by side with your friends. Okay, next, please. The world has definitely changed and it is continuously changing. It is evolving. It is very dynamic. Next, please. And so is test taking. So test taking has also changed. Like in some parts of the world, in Europe, for example, they have begun integrating augmented reality into their evaluation tests, such that each test taker is given your augmented reality goggles, and they are immersed in a virtual environment. And as they are immersed in a virtual environment, they're being asked to answer questions as they move along. And this is actually the essence of technology in terms of the new normal. Well, in the States, there are already apps that would allow students just to focus. They download the apps on their smartphone and then they focus it on a certain thing, for example, a gadget, even plants, even trees. And out of nowhere, a discussion of all those things pops out of their screen. So that is already something that's being used. So wala na yung mga panahon na nagdo-drawing si teacher na ito ay puno kahit mukha siyang kamatis. Okay? So nowadays, things have changed. And I know for a fact, even in Europe, there are now apps that would help people hunt jobs. You just download the app, put it in your smartphone, and then focus your smartphone on a building. And all the job vacancies in that building would eventually pop out of your smartphone screen. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that cool? And that's one thing that eventually maybe if somebody could come up with an app that you download it and then you focus it in a book, and then that app will filter all the information that you need to review for your test taking, then that's going to be one good adventure, right? It helps you filter the information because that's the problem now. Everything is on the internet. Teachers have lost their position as knowledge authorities. Dr. Google is better than anybody else now, with the answers being ranked as the best answer, the second best, the third best. You can even actually rank it according to the dates of publication. So nobody beats Dr. Google. But it's the how of doing it that separates human mentors from Dr. Google. And that's what I'd like to impart to everyone. Next, please. So let's take a look at the Philippine scenario. Because of the present pandemic, the Professional Regulatory Commission actually released resolution number 1256 series of 2020, which provides guidelines on the conduct of licensure examination from September to December 2020. This is just in time because a lot of people are asking, matutuloy ba yung board exam? Magkakaroon kaya? Hindi kaya matutuloy? Next year na kaya? O kailan kaya? Okay, based on this resolution, the PRC actually has clustered the different professional licensure exams into three. Small scale, or those with 1,000 or less examinees, the test or licensure test would be conducted unless stakeholders recommend its cancellation. Stakeholders would mean the accredited professional organization, the accredited integrated professional organization, related government agencies. Okay, they could actually recommend cancellation of any test. within the small scale cluster. Now, what about for the medium scale test, or those with 1,001 to 5,000 examinees, as well as the large scale test, or those with more than 5,000 examinees? It says in the resolution that the test shall not be conducted, unless stakeholders recommend its conduct. But there's an exemption, with the exemption of professions which are urgently needed by the government in response to the pandemic. So if you belong to the health sciences sector, like for example, medical technologies, nurses, midwives, and you are being called upon now, the government needs you for their response to the pandemic. So chances are, okay, if there's a proper endorsement, okay, chances are, even if there are more than 1,000 examinees or more than 5,000 examinees, the test would be conducted. However, pay particular attention on the fourth important point that I'm highlighting, because I summarized the contents of the resolution, and here it is. Licensure examinations shall only be conducted under MGCQ classification. Now, there's one thing that's actually confusing me at this point in time, because we have yet to achieve the MGCQ classification. What does that mean? What's the implication? Di hindi matutuloy ang board exam o matutuloy pag nag-MGCQ? Okay? So again, the resolution specifies that the licensure examination shall only be conducted under MGCQ. But, okay, maybe they could actually accept application. But the concern now is, what about if we indeed have achieved MGCQ classification before the scheduled exam, but on the day of the exam, we get reverted back to GCQ or ECQ at worst? So once again, the conduct of the examination shall be in accordance with the guidelines of the PRC as reviewed by the IATF. So I think that's what matters the most. So we are actually in a very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous situation. In other words, hindi natin makita, hindi natin ma-predict tutuloy ba o hindi. Now, the key is you just have to prepare. And the preparation should be very flexible, such that when the exams are to be conducted, you're ready to take it. And when they reschedule it, you will also be ready to reschedule your mind. Okay, so next slide, please. So what is a possible solution? This is what I'm trying to tell you a while back. Anytime, anywhere learning. Engage in chunks or chewable modes of learning. Watch any YouTube video that would help you achieve your goal that you've set for yourself in terms of your licensure exams. Scribble those little notes that you can while doing your thing in the office, or if you are working as a student. No, I was also once like you. I was a working student in my senior year, and that was quite really a challenge, because after my class in my alma mater, my shift is actually 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. closing shift, and I got paid 11.25 pesos an hour. And on the first day of my job, I actually was unable to perform my duty. Why? Because I was dead tired from my classes. And so I actually had all sorts of kapalpakan. The end was, okay, I earned a cumulative charge of 1,500 pesos for the messed up ketchup, creams, burgers, and patties. Okay, and my sister used to joke around, tatanda ka na dyan, di mo na yung mababayaran, because my salary is 11.25 pesos an hour. But that's where I learned the value of hard work and working hard for every penny that I wish to save, so that I could actually buy myself what I need for my test preparations. Why do I have to exert that much effort? Just like what's happening right now. I was in a generation that was quite difficult, because during my generation, after we graduated, US closed. There's not much employment opportunity here in the Philippines. And so I was at the crossroads. I didn't know what to do. Will I be teaching? Will I be putting up a business? Will I be continuing to do my master's? And the ending, because my mom interfered, I did all three at the same time. So I put up a business, I did my master's, and I was sending a younger sibling to school. And at the end of it all, I was asking my mom, can I give up one thing? Because, you know, this is eating so much of energy. I said, can I give up my master's? And my mom said, no, because eventually that's going to be a requirement to what you want to do. And then I said, can I give up the business? Because you can just imagine, I was paying rent, I was paying staff, and all we had in my first class were 3 students. Tatlo lang po yung naniwala nung una ko nag-open ng business. At yung dalawa, apathetic pa. So pag nagpatawa ako, isa nang tumatawa sa akin. Okay? If that one person who laughs with me gets absent, I laugh to myself. Okay? But eventually, my hard work paid off because I was persistent. And of course, I was guided by my parents and I listened to them. That's what I'd like to share with you guys today. Next slide, please. So the first question that comes to mind when you're actually preparing for anytime, anywhere, or flexible learning is, what device do I need? Now, let's actually compare ourselves to one of our ASEAN neighbors, okay, who is much alike in terms of profile of students and economic status. Next slide, please. Let's compare ourselves to Thailand. Smartphone is the top device that students use to connect to the internet in Thailand. If we talk about this, during my time, traditionally, we don't know what a smartphone is. Please click. This is the nearest that we could think of when we think of smartphone. We just imagine, okay? I grew up in a generation of imagining things in school. Mabuti na lang hindi kami nag-develop ng full-blown delusions eventually, false belief, okay? So, while scrolling through the internet, actually, these are the images that are nearest a smartphone that I could actually present to everyone, okay? Your generation is so lucky because knowledge is at the flick of each of your fingertips. And you just make one click, you have what you want. You never experience what we experience, that we have to go through the library, go through this bibliographical cards, okay, smell all the dust in the drawers, and then eventually open the book. You're so relieved to find out that the single book that you're looking for is there, and then you discover that the page that you need is torn off. That's our generation. But we became good professionals because we have been patient. Kaya pag tinatanong ako, what's the difference between the generation before and the generation now? We're more patient because every time we go through a specific learning activity, we have to go through a process. Right now, all you have to do is, what's the normal value of this thing? You click on your internet. Before, we have to work it from memory. Okay, next slide, please. So what does it take to be ready for the new normal in test preparations? There's only one thing I'd like to highlight. Next slide, please. You have to have a sense of focus. The first thing in that framework tells you, focus on your goal. Like the popular management guru is saying, Stephen Covey, begin with an end in mind. Have something to serve as your guide. Which brings me to an anecdote between a mother and her child. Bagong graduate yung anak niya, and sabi ng anak niya, Ma'am, Nay, gusto ko po sana matanggap ako sa trabaho after my first interview. So could you help me out? Is my interview? Sabi naman ng nanay, of course anak, sige. Tatanungin kita ng mga questions na most likely itatanong sa'yo with your interview. And then, I'll suggest kung paano mo siya sasagutin ng maayos. So the first question that the mother threw sa kanyang anak ay, what is your goal in life? 5 years from now, how do you see yourself? So what's your goal? Sagot ng anak, to be a mother someday. Stand. Nagulat ang nanay. Sabi niya, ay naku, tigilan na natin to, Boyet, ha? Okay. So what does that tell us? Okay, Boyet will not have the anatomical requirements to become a mother someday. So you have to make sure that when you actually identify your goal, you have to have those tools that will help you push yourself towards that goal. And we're talking about your psychological tools. And there are 3 important things I'd like to highlight. The first one is planning. You have to plan. Everything that you have to do, small steps, big ones, should be geared towards achieving that goal. Second, persist. Persistence. Never stop in pushing yourself to achieve that goal. And third, last but not the least, but one of the most important things that you have to remember, you need to develop patience. Sometimes people just don't know that right immediately before they quit, they could have gotten what they wanted to. Sayang, di ba? So always remember, never stop before reaching your goal. Finish what you started. E paano sir pag hindi ko natapos what I started? Then, train the next generation within your family to push for that goal. Okay? Naalala ko tuloy, sabi ng isang teacher sa bata, okay? Ano ang pangarap mo sa buhay? Then sabi ng bata, ma'am, gusto ko po maging katulad ng tatay ko na kumikita ng 250,000 a month. Sabi ng teacher, wow, yun ba yung kita ng tatay mo? Sabi naman ng bata, hindi po ma'am, yun din po ang pangarap niya. Okay, so in essence, kung hindi naman matuloy sa ating henerasyon yung goal, you can actually mentor somebody else to help you out, reach that goal eventually. Now, the second in that framework, focus, is actually open your mind and adapt to the new normal. This thing is not going to go away. We might as well embrace it. We might as well put ourselves into the learning role such that we absorb every information that we need to learn to push us towards achieving a goal. And eventually, as they say, hard work is gold. So all we need to do is to steady our ship. At in Tagalog, we say, huwag tayong tatamad-tamad. And to which a lot of people would say, hindi naman po ako tamad. Sadya lang po talaga akong masipag magpahinga. Okay? May difference ba yung hindi tamad at masipag magpahinga? Okay. Now, what is important at this point is, when you talk of test taking, this is what I'm sharing. In some parts of the US, okay, ang test taking nila doon, open notes na. Why? They're acknowledging the fact na pagka daw ang isang bata tinanong mo ng tanong at hindi mo binigyan ng tool para sagutin ng tanong, para mo na rin siyang tinanong ng anong oras na wala siyang relo. So chances are in the future, if that happens in test taking, eventually most questions would be reflective in nature, such that in international licensure test, kahit anong Google mo, hindi mo makikita ang tamang sagot because the questions are scenario-based. It is actually more of the reflective type of questions. Wala na yung recall type of questions. Okay? Next, the letter C in that word focus means concentrate on the task one at a time. So focus on the task that would bring you closer to achieving your goals. Listen and respond positively to feedback given by other people. And the most important thing is know the criteria for success. Now remember, Aristotle once said, we are what we repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence is not an act, it is a habit. And success is not a destination, it is part of the journey. Failing is a part of success. I remember my time when I was preparing for my board exams, okay? Well, I get a very low scores in my, very low scores in my pre-board. So what I did, I went back to the province, nagkulong ako doon, I arranged my notes, I gave myself time to actually recharge. You have to have a me time. But the most important thing is never give up on that dream. Because on my part, for myself, I never really dreamt of becoming a nurse. Originally, I wanted to be a broadcast journalist. Di sana ako naging broadcast journalist. Ako na sana yung gamit ang siyensya, lohika at pagkamaparaan. Okay, o kaya yung hindi namin kayo tatantanan. Okay, I would have been them. But you know, as fate would have it, nursing has been a course in the family. I have 5 aunts who are nurses, 5 cousins who are nurses, and a sibling for a nurse. So everyone is a nurse in the family. I didn't have any choice. So I just have to get through it. So ang importante, have a goal. Next, the letter U in that framework focus means unlearn. What do you mean by unlearn? Let go of the old traditional way of doing things. Never procrastinate. Welcome everything that is new. And remember this, everything that is new is difficult at first before they are easy. In other words, ano strategy dapat yan? Learn how to find your way. Kung marunong kang pumasok, dapat marunong kang lumabas. Paano yun, sir? I remember one teacher, sabi niya kay Edward, your essay about your pet cat is almost the same as the essay written by John about his pet cat. So the teacher asked Edward, did you copy from John? And Edward answered, no, ma'am, I did not copy from him. It's such that we talk about the same cat. Okay? So in other words, kung marunong lumusot ang millennial sa mga ganong sitwasyon, definitely alam ko, marunong din kayong lumusot when you get yourself entangled in a maze of a lot of information, sometimes conflicting, that you find on the net. And last but not the least on that framework of focus is strategize. Now, when you strategize, you have to keep your plans fair. F-A-I-R. What do I mean by that? Keep it fresh. So review it once in a while, revise it. A, achievable. I, inspired, always find an inspiration. And R, responsive. So change is something we cannot control. But what we can control would be our own reaction in terms of how change is occurring. So there's actually a big problem now in terms of the discrepancy of what is being taken up in the prescribed curriculum and what is actually being implemented in terms of curriculum in use. Now, there's a lot of question about this. Why? Sometimes what we learn are very theoretical, but once we take our licensure test, we are bombarded with questions that are based on the real life situation. Now, always remember, when you're preparing for test taking, you are preparing within the ideal world context. It's ivory tower professional practice. So which simply means you have to focus on what is theoretically right. Okay, the question is, ang dami namin na pag-aralan, sir, eh. Diba? Style naman kasi talaga natin yan. Bakit dumami yan? Gawa din natin. When we get to see a lot of good handouts from our classmates, this is what we do. Uy, ang ganda naman. Pa-send mo naman sa akin yan, pa-screenshot mo, pa-email mo. Tapos, we ask somebody else, uy, ang ganda naman, photocopy naman ako. And then at night, when we get to see, wow, ang dami kong learning modules. Ang gaganda. And then pagkita mo, sobrang dami, tulog na ako. Okay? So, that will not bring you to your goal. Why? Because you're not strategizing. You are just collecting. You are just curating information. When we say we strategize, you have to come up with something that works for yourself. Remember, the new normal now of test preparations is not calling for standardized preparations. Gone are the days that you have to ask somebody to give you a comprehensive lecture, to give you a comprehensive review. That's not the trend now. The trend is customization, individualization. The trend now is look for a strategy that works for you. And let me share a strategy that has worked for me, and it took me 3 years, even studying in the States, to create, okay, a version of this strategy to enable students to pass their licensure test. Now, it has been adopted in 25 countries so far. Next slide, please. And I call it studying in a functional way, or I call it the functional concepts method. How do we go about this? Now, I'm told that the audience today is actually made up of graduates of accountancy, health sciences, okay, social sciences. But one thing I'd like to ask is, are there people in the audience who are graduates of social work? Okay, if there's none, then perfect. Because, okay, sabi ni Ma'am Babes, she's shaking her head, there's none. Because, okay, I purposely did this. I would want you to think like a social worker, even if you did not have that formal degree. Paano yun, sir? Tuturuan mo kami to think like a social worker? Yes. Next slide, please. Say, for example, in your licensure test, this question came up. Which client should the social worker evaluate first? 1, 45-year-old man who is homeless, newly diagnosed with diabetes. 2, 68-year-old man with heart failure and no insurance coverage. 3, 51-year-old woman with history of recent myocardial infarction is getting a divorce. And 4, 65-year-old woman who had cerebrovascular accident and has been living alone at home. Maybe if you're a graduate of accountancy, you would look at the age of the patients. If you're a graduate of nursing or medtech, you would look at the diagnosis. But hey, I'm putting here a question that is trying to assess the competence of a social worker who is about to practice as a professional. Bigla niyo ang sasabihin sa akin, ang hirap naman, sir. Parang, sino dyan? Anong basis ko? Hanap akong libro. But if I give you a functional concept, next slide, please. Let's use the functional concept method, okay? And what is an example of a functional concept? Social workers are the dominant professionals in supportive housing. Therefore, the priority client for evaluation of the social worker would be the homeless client. Bingo! So that's the keyword. Homeless client is a functional concept. It's the priority of the social worker. Having that concept in mind, let's go back to the question and let's answer it. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's answer. So once again, which client should the social worker evaluate first? Now, I'd like you to go through the options once again and tell me which do you think of the four. And everybody were actually giving me, okay, a sign that says 1, 1, 1, because now you know what to look for. And the keyword is homeless. That's studying in a functional way. So wag tayong mag-focus sa trivial. Ang problema, sir, paano namin malalaman yung functional concepts? I'd be more than willing to help you out. That has been part of my training in the US as an instructional designer. And this is uniquely Rey Gapuz, the functional concepts method of studying. And it took me like 3 years to institutionalize everything. So I help you out, okay? Okay, let's move on. Next slide, please. That's a strategy that is uniquely, okay, specific to my need as a learner and to the needs of most professionals. It has been adopted now in 25 countries. Let's move on, please. Next slide. Okay, everybody got that correctly. So, what are the best practices for millennials undergoing test preparations? Maybe you would be asking me, why are we supposed to be talking about millennials when some of us have already considered ourselves as belonging to Generation Z or the youngest generation? But hey, some experts have actually pushed the birth dates of millennials from 1980 to 2000. So in essence, if you are just turning 20, you are still considered a millennial at the tail end, okay? So let's talk about the things that characterizes the millennial so that we will be able to understand ourselves. And if we understand ourselves, we will be able to empower ourselves to develop the things that we need to develop to achieve the goal, which is to top the board. Pero pag ako, tinanong ngayon, mas maganda siguro, pass or fail na lang. Parang sa States. In fact, in the university where I teach, I give just 2 grades. A perfect grade and a grade that says not yet. Sir, ba't ganon? Oh, sarap ko maging teacher, no? Okay. Why? Because I acknowledge that people will get better every day. So if I say not yet, they will have to redo some assignments, and then we move to goal setting and once again evaluate what they have done. I would mentor them and assist them to achieve what they have set for themselves as a goal in terms of their grade. So gone are the days in which you always have a grade of 1.0 or A, straight A plus as your goal. Sabi nga natin ngayong pandemic, tandaan natin to. Hindi mo makakain ang uno. Okay, so what matters the most is you know how to survive the realities, the harsh realities of everyday life. And that's what makes a person successful. Sometimes the winner in the game called life is not the person who considers himself the best. Sometimes, or most of the time, the winner in a game called life is the person who thinks he can. So every one of you say, I can. Okay, I can, because I know you can. So let's move on. Next slide, please. Okay, now what are the characteristics of millennials as learners? Okay, I have a code here, millennials. Millennials love to be mentored. So mentoring is their type of thing. Well, what's the difference between a mentor and a teacher? A teacher focuses on a mistake and corrects that mistake immediately. A mentor asks the student to reflect on that mistake, and together with the mentor, they learn how to do it correctly. So the teacher controls teaching and learning. The mentor acknowledges flexibility in learning. So the trend now to teach millennials is be flexible. When I was studying in the States, we were asked to create our own curriculum. What's the first subject we want to take? Okay, they remove all the prerequisites, and within that subject, they ask us to choose which topic we want to learn first. Because they're acknowledging, tayo masyadong structured. Anatomy muna, bago pathophysiology, bago laboratory data. Doon, pag sinabing, gusto ko malaman kagad yung pathophysiology, you are expected to exert additional effort to know about anatomy if it's not yet taken in class. But nobody can stop you from enrolling in a subject that you want to learn right away. Okay? So let's move on. Next, indulge in technology-assisted learning environment. Look at our GIF here. So you see a little kid while reading with all the headsets and the sounds. Those are very, very millennial. Actually, parents are asking, is it right na payagan ko yung bata na nakikinig ng music habang nagbabasa? Or nagsi-cellphone, nag-iPad, nagla-laptop habang nag-aaral? That's multitasking, typical of millennials. If you stop them, you're not helping them out. Look, so what's the right strategy? This is one thing I'd like to share with you guys. There are two types of motivations that explains why millennials are like this. One, external motivation. The external motivation is that they use the gadgets as a status symbol, especially pag iPhone 11 yan or iPhone 12. Ikaw lang ang meron sa klase noon. So you're proud. You show it off. Next is the intrinsic motivation, the internal motivation. Millennials are so attached to peers and family that researchers have proven that every 15 to 30 minutes, they check on what's happening with their family through social media, through the Instagram, or whatever platform there is. Such that if you are a teacher and you confiscate the gadget of the millennial student, you're just stopping or addressing their external or extrinsic motivation. But deep inside, yung kanilang internal struggle niya, ano kaya nangyayari sa nanay ko? Ano kaya nangyayari sa kaibigan ko? It never stops. So the more that they get distracted. So the key is when millennials listen to music, opens their iPad, opens their iPhone, and opens their laptop at the same time, doing multitasking, allow them to do so. Give them technology breaks to do this because this defines their generation. They're called digital citizens. Okay? Tayo, we're just digital migrants. Mga millennial. Okay? Next. Millennials love to know the processes and structures required to be successful. Okay? They want also to be successful, but they need to be mentored. But one thing good about millennials is they learn best by doing because they are in a highly technology-aided environment that they can just Google anything that they want to learn. Okay? Then, they are encouraged to question authority. Remember, they have the Me Too attitude. Hindi lang ikaw ang bida sa teacher. Ako din may sasabihin. Okay? This is the reason why they need to be guided in processing information because they are near expert in the skill of information searching, but after they search for the information that they need, they don't know how to process it. That's a problem. As I've been telling you kanina, marami magsasabi, email mo sa akin yan, kay screenshot mo sa akin, send me, photocopy me, give me a copy. But after that, they don't know what to do with it. So they are near expert in the skill of information seeking, but they need to be guided in processing the information. We have to teach them how to study, how to prepare, okay? Now, in terms of attitude, millennials are inclusive. They welcome everybody to their group, okay? This is emanating from their upbringing because millennials are attached to their peers and family. But the disadvantage of this is that they are so spoiled and nurtured by a loving family such that it's very difficult for them to accept negative feedback. They've grown in an environment, they're so protected, okay? So it's very difficult for them to actually receive negative feedback. That's why in one university where I studied in the States, our professor never gave a negative feedback. Even if you wrote something which is so badly written, they will find one positive thing and focus on that one positive thing all the time. Okay, in other words, walang nanlalait. Okay, now next, millennials love to work in groups. So you would see a lot of them joining Facebook community groups. They're trying to learn messenger groups. That's how millennials are learning now. Now, what's the danger of that thing? Invite a mentor, because if there are disagreements in terms of answers to specific questions, it's very difficult to balance and come up with a consensus based on your own reading. Sabog-sabog yun eh. It's good if you have a mentor. Like for example, there's a question about sino ba yung priority for flu vaccine? Aba, magkakaiba ang sagot. Okay? Before 2012, sabi ng WHO, yung mga elderly patients. After 2012, sabi na ng WHO, yung mga pregnant patients. Pero ngayon may COVID, iba na uli ang priority na magre-receive ng flu vaccine. See how answers to questions change? It depends on your generation. So you always have to have a mentor, okay? And then, last but not the least, on that list of characteristics of millennials as learners, they seek positive feedback. And that's one thing I live by as a mentor. I always give positive feedback to my students, no matter what. I always try and exert an effort to find something worth being praised in a student because tumatatak yun sa puso ng estudyante. Okay, so let's move on. Next slide, please. So what are the advantages of the new normal type of learning? Next, in one word. Next slide. It's fun. What do I mean by fun? Next one. What do I mean by fun? F means faster delivery of content because you're now just surfing the net. So you are at a very special point in time in this generation where everything that you need is just there. Okay, next, okay, you have unlimited access to resources because the internet is open 24 hours a day. All you have to do is to actually open your laptop or open your gadget and scribble some notes on the search engine. And finally, this is important. Need-based, ideal for tight budget. At this point in time, when we have pandemic, maybe you will have to sacrifice the review fees because you can do self-study. Fair enough. But you could also try to figure things out that you could actually create your own program based on your need and ask a mentor to mentor you on the topics or the subjects that you may need help professionally. So in essence, that's one of the advantages of flexible learning. It is need-based. Kung ano lang yung kailangan mo. Hindi mo naman kailangang reviewin lahat from A to Z. Dahil kung gagawin mo yan, that's a sure way to fail. You can never repeat 100% what your university has taught you for 4 years. But what you can do is to actually filter the information, identify the areas that you need to study, focus on those areas, and reflect and study, dig deep into the concepts. Next slide, please. So are you ready for online learning, which is actually the new normal in terms of test preparations? And you would ask me, do I have to have special skills? Do I have to have patience when I'm doing online learning? Well, ang maganda sa online learning, you can access this anytime, anywhere. Okay, next slide, please. So what does it take? No special skills. Just dive in it. Dive through it. Pasok ka lang ng pasok. Ang importante, simulan mo. Sabi nga nila, di ba? Magsimula ka. Just start. Eventually, you'll find your way. And before you know it, tapos ka na pala. You have your professional license and you're now ready to face the professional demands of your career. Move on. Next slide, please. So, you need to be self-motivated. You need to be independent. Educate yourself, and you have to have that sense of responsibility to know which information you need to study for your licensure test. Yan lang yung kailangan mo. No other special characteristics. You just have to be motivated, independent, and responsible. Next slide, please. So let's check your readiness. Okay, so let's begin. Next slide, please. When studying, are you the student who, click please, wants to listen to music at the same time or chat with my friends on Facebook? Say yes or no. Next. When I am given a take-home test, I believe that, click please, it is acceptable to ask help from my friends and family. Say yes or no to yourself. Okay, next. I believe that I can teach myself and others too. Say yes or no to yourself. Now, if you've said yes to at least 2 of those questions I've posted, it simply means that your mindset is geared towards the new normal in test preparations. In other words, you are motivated to work independently and you acknowledge that you have the support of your family and friends to help you achieve your personal goals. Let's move on. Next slide, please. Now, this time, let's reflect. So what's our first reflection? Next slide. Okay. I want to prepare for the future. That's the mindset of the millennial. That's the mindset of a young professional in this generation. So if you have that mindset, you're aligned to the technology-based thinking process. Next reflection. I want a guide who understands me. So ayaw mo na ng teacher, gusto mo na ng mentor. You want a mentor, a guide on the side. Yung hindi nagagalit, yung hindi ako binibigyan ng grade, yung lagi lang akong iniintindi. That's a mentor. Well, if you have that kind of mindset, your thinking is aligned to technology-based or online learning. Let's move on. Next reflection. I want to collaborate, not to compete with others. This is what I'm trying to tell you. Professionals are not defined by the uno. Sabi ko nga, hindi mo makakain ang uno at this point in time. So the trend now is collaboration. Learn from each other, learn from one another, and have a mentor to solidify that learning. If you have this mindset, then your mindset is aligned to online or technology-based learning. Let's move on. Next slide, please. So, what is the right mindset? Okay. The right mindset depends on what works for you. Now, once I asked a student this question, what is your motto in life? What is the motto that you live by on a day-to-day basis that defines who you are as a student? Ito yung sagot niya. Next slide, please. Ang motto niya, students study to become perfect at what they do. But since nobody is perfect, so please click, why study? Okay. Yan yung motto niya. Ano yung sinasabi niya? Hindi siya sinasabing huwag tayong mag-aral. Ang sinasabi niya, yung pwede nating matutunan sa libro na hindi naman natin perpektong matututunan. Minsan mas natututunan natin sa labas ng classroom. Iba lang yung pagkasabi niya. Students study to become perfect at what they do. But since nobody is perfect, why study? Okay, so with that, I'd like to end my presentation, and we're just on time, 30 minutes. Thank you very much, and I'd be more than willing, and I would be glad to answer questions that you have for me. Okay, thank you very much for listening.
Wow, thank you very much, Mr. Rey Gapuz, for that very inspiring talk. I really like the mnemonics. I think that's one technique also to really review and learn about different concepts. So with that, we're gonna proceed with our question and answer part. So again, to our learners, our students, if you may, you can publish or you can post your questions at our Q&A tab. So I have one question for you over here, sir. It's from an anonymous student. She asks, or he asks, how will a student set their own mindset if they still don't know their path?
You know, there's one good thing. That's actually a very, very good question. The fact that you are aware that you don't know where you're headed to, the awareness is step number one towards that worthwhile journey. That awareness, that key thing, you are recognizing that you still don't know. Everything is a blur. Everybody went through that stage. When I actually graduated, I also didn't know where will I supposed to go. Will I be a staff nurse? Will I be an educator? Will I be an entrepreneur? Will I be a researcher? Nobody knows. Just go with the flow. The key is start, begin, make those resumes, complete those requirements, attend a job interview, present yourself, okay? And eventually, the plan that you have envisioned for yourself will unravel right before your very eyes. And when that thing happens, you would say, how did I even get here? Because initially, when everything is a blur and you are aware that you have yet to identify the mindset and the goal, that is a positive indication because you are aware. Ina-acknowledge mo na, ay, wala pa akong goal eh. Ay, wala pa akong nakikita saan ako pupunta. Hindi ka nag-iisa sa ganyang pakiramdam. Baka bago mo malaman, meron ngang hindi aware kung saan pupunta, hindi rin aware sa mga goals. Mas malala yun. Now, at this point, yung awareness, that is already a step towards your successful achievement of eventually a goal which you will set for yourself. So congratulations, and you are aware. That's step number 1.
All right. And another question, sir, is how will students know what areas they need to improve on if mentors or educators only give them positive feedback? Siguro kulturang Pinoy, no? Puro positive feedback. Very kind.
Yeah, kind. That's where self-awareness would usually come in. That's the reason why. When you have the traditional mindset, di ba? May positive feedback. Sabi nga natin, ang mga millennials, yung kasi yung hinahanap nila no? The positive feedback. The psychological paycheck. Now, question is, what motivates you primarily as a culture? Okay, here's my point. As a culture, Filipinos should never be criticized. Yan. Since sa findings sa study in Tomas Andres, ano sinasabi niya? That for the Filipino, a criticism to their job or a criticism to their person is considered a criticism to their personality. Why? Because our worldview is holistic. Ano ibig sabihin ng holistic worldview? We consider our work and our personality as one. Kung pinintasan mo yung trabaho ng Pilipino, para mong pinintasan yung pagkatao niya. That's why ang estudyante, sumasama ang loob sa teacher kasi pag binigyan siya ng negative feedback, pakiramdam niya, pag sinabi mo, ang pangit naman ng project mo, pag uwi ng estudyante, pangit daw. Ang natira sa kanya, naiwan sa kanya impression, yung pangit. Yung pangit yung project, pangit na rin ang tingin niya sa sarili niya. Because that's how we are as a people. Easterners are like that. That's how different we are from the Westerners. Because Westerners have dualistic mindset, meaning they separate the subject from the object. So the key is, paano daw malalaman anong weakness kung puro positive? Okay. It takes a lot of revisions in terms of what we're doing right now, the pedagogy that we have right now. Bakit? For one, yung grading system natin, hindi pa siya standardized. Okay, in the States kasi everything naka-rubric siya. So there's no reason na pag na-achieve ng estudyante yung rubric, there's no reason why you're not giving a perfect grade. Okay? Although I remember I have a professor in the States na sobrang pedantic. Ano ibig sabihin ng pedantic? Lahat pinapansin niya. Pag ang nakalagay sa rubric, ang requirements, APA dapat ang format. Ito, I never got a perfect grade from that professor. Okay? Why? Kasi yung period na naging comma, may deduction ka na 0.01. Okay? But it's stated in the rubrics that you have to follow strictly the APA format. So if you don't follow it strictly, commit errors, then you get a deduction. That's what I'm trying to say. When we have that kind of maturity in terms of our evaluation methodologies and tools, then it's gonna be easy on the part of the student. Okay? Kasi wala naman siyang mamimiss eh. If what we have is what is being tested, then I can say what is taken up in the classroom is what is being tested. I can say it's not going to be difficult for the student to pass the test. Here's an example. Why is it a lot of Filipinos are having difficulty passing international licensure tests? Precisely because international licensing tests have biases that are aligned with the culture within that country. Okay? Example ng kultura ha. When you go to our fast food, what do you see pag nasa order counter ka? Okay? You have a picture of the fast food and then you have, what's the next? The price. Kasi yun ang mentality ng Pilipino eh. Ang bibilin ko yung mura. Okay? Kaya may price. You go to other countries, you go to their fast food, what do you have? A picture of what you can order plus the caloric requirement. So easy sa kanila. Alam nila ilang calories ang one glass of Coke. Alam nila ang ilang calories ang isang piece of burger. Such that in the licensure test, ang tinatanong, how much calories could be found in the following set of meals? Sa atin, effort yon. Kasi yung kultura natin, may picture nga nakikita sa fast food, wala namang caloric requirement. Ang nakalagay, presyo. Okay? Pero sa kanila, every day, it's a no-brainer. Nakikita nila, umorder sila ng pagkain, puro caloric requirements ang nandun. Caloric data, so it's easy. So, you know, that's what I'm trying to say. If what is being evaluated or what is being measured is what is being discussed or taken up and reinforced in the environment, then there's no reason na negative ang feedback sa students. It always has to be positive. I remember one time, I asked a student, sabi ko, so where do you do your related learning or clinical experiences? Sabi, sir, kasi di ba requirement ng school, dapat daw sa hospital with 100 bed capacity or so. And I said, okay, so ilang capacity ba nung hospital? Saan kayo nag-duty? Sabi niya, sir, 100. Okay, so ilan ang pasyente nyo? Sir, 2. Okay. Anong case ng 2? Sir, diarrhea. Okay. So, 100 bed nga yung capacity, dalawa naman yung existing client. So, may problema pa rin. Na-expose siya dun sa environment that is not reinforcing what is theoretically being taught. That's what I'm saying. So, you could always have a negative feedback. Pero, kung yung environment natin would reinforce what is being taught theoretically, then you always have a positive feedback. Kasi, naa-align mo yung pinag-aaralan mo sa pinapakita sa environment mo. Okay? Masasabi ko nga ang mga Filipinos were more patient in terms of reading. Well, most students in the Western areas, they don't read really that much, but since their environment is ideal, they learn from what they see, from what they observe, from what they do, because they have an ideal setup. Unlike dito sa atin, di ba, minsan ang oxygen tank nagiging parang octopus sa dami na ng mga nakakabit na ng mga tubes na dalawa na yung nag-share. Okay, but that's a reality of a third world country. But what I'm trying to say is, if our learning environment is more reinforcing of what is ideal, then there's no way that you can get a negative feedback. It would always be positive. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we have a couple more questions, sir.
Go ahead.
Another interesting one, no? Just your personal motto daw and mantra of success. Kasi siguro, di ba, you have been very successful in the business already. So,
my mantra, I never think of myself as successful. I am always rooted to where I am. Ako po ay laking probinsya din. Sa aming malit na baryo Gumamugam nga ang tawag ko. Ako din po ay naging working student and I have learned how to make do. For one day, ang allowance ko ay 10 pesos lang. And if you ask me, paano nagkakasya ang 10 pesos nung araw? Hindi naman 60s yun, 1990s naman nasa UST ako. Bibili ako ng sausage na 6.25, kabisado ko ang presyo niyan, 6.25, 8 ang laman. Ulam ko yung 2 sa umaga, yung 3 sa tanghali, 3 sa gabi. And then I walk 2 blocks away from UST para bumili ng kanin, di ba? So 1.25 ang isang kanin. So 3 kanin, 3.75, 6.25 isang lata na sausage, 10 pesos. Sir, paano pa gusto mo mag-snack? Doon po papasok yung pagiging social climber natin eh. Okay. We have a lot of friends na anak mayaman, okay, yayayain kong kumain sa turo-turo. And then pag kumain na siya sa turo-turo, nakikihati na ako sa ulam niya, di ba? Okay, so that's how I save like 7 pesos so that in the next 3 days, I have my snack made of banana Q tsaka Mountain Dew. So Mountain Dew then was 175, banana Q is 75 centavos. So yung 250 ko, may Mountain Dew at banana Q na ako. Kaya nung nagtuturo na ako sa aking alma mater, nilibre ako ng isang co-faculty. Binigyan niya ako ng Coke at saka banana Q. Yung Coke kinuha ko, yung banana Q sinoli ko, bumili ako ng siopaw. Sabi niya sa akin, aba ang Rey Gapuz ang sosyal, inisnab yung banana Q ko. Sabi ko, ma'am, hindi naman po. Pero sa loob po kasi ng 4 na taon po sa koleyo ng pag-nursing. Ang snack ko po ay banana Q, Mountain Dew, banana Q. Mapait na po yung dila ko sa kaka-banana Q at Mountain Dew. Kaya ngayon nagtuturo na ako, siopaw naman. Yun nga sinasabi natin, di ba? Ano yung motto in life? Oh, from that situation, sabi nga natin, pag maikli ang kumot, kay baby ipagamit. Okay, joke lang. Pag maikli ang kumot, matutong mamaluktot. Okay? So eventually, hindi ka naman magtatagal dyan eh. Just push yourself, work hard towards that goal, eventually you'll get through it and achieve it. Okay.
Okay, sir. And then for the questions remaining, I would like to weave them together kasi it all boils down to motivation and mindset. So allow me to read them together. So sabi ng isang student anonymously, any advice to a student who is being negative and they don't believe that they can achieve success with a positive mindset? And then another one said, unsure po ako sa path that I am taking. Although I'm enjoying what I'm doing, is it good to continue with doubts? That's from Craze Elaine Daisog. And then another student, similar also to the first two, si Thor Melgon. Sabi niya, how will I start to regain how will a student start to regain their lost will or motivation, despite that some students are actually doing good naman, and then all of a sudden nawalan sila ng motivation during the process. So it's all.
I understand. We are in a very depressive situation. It begins with positive self-talk. Okay? Begins with positive self-talk. Initially, makukorny yan kasi sasabihin mo, ano ba yun? Ang babaw naman ng positive self-talk. Gagawin ko. Okay? Well, pagharap mo sa salamin, every day, this is one thing I'd like to share with you guys. If you view everything as a form of a threat, then you will most likely be defeated. Kasi ang threat ngayon, grabe. Diba? Economically, health, daming threat, the viral infection threat. But if you view everything as a challenge that you can overcome, then that sets the difference. Okay, there are studies done in Harvard that says, okay, the way how you perceive a situation changes what your body does to adjust. In other words, as the saying goes, what the mind can conceive, the body can. O, di ba? Ang old saying, sasabihin nyo, achieve. No. Based on that research, the body can believe. So everything begins in the mind. How do you do that? Simple. Okay. Meron tayong tinatawag na happy hormone. And this happy hormone is your oxytocin. Okay? And your oxytocin could actually trigger, the release could be triggered by what we eat. Okay? Example of things that could trigger the release of oxytocin could be peanuts, chocolates, yan. So ano pa nangyayari, sir? Pag kumain ka ng merong peanuts, may chocolates, it triggers the release of oxytocin, then you will feel very positive about yourself. Then you begin to self-talk. Di mo pa nare-realize na yung ginagawa ng mga manliligaw? That's the secret. Bakit nagre-regalo ng tsokolate ang mga lalaki? So that when the woman eats the chocolate, they would feel like, oh, I feel exalted. Why do I feel happy when I'm with this person? Maybe ito na yung love. That's what psychologists term as hormonal love. So paano ko malalaman na due to chocolates lang yon? Tignan mo, if beyond 2 years nawala yung feeling, dahil lang yun dun sa kinakain mo. Pero beyond 2 years nandun yung feeling, then that's true love. Pero may kakilala ko, nililigawan, 5 years na nireregaluhan ng tsokolate, hindi pa rin siya sinasagot. Anong problema? Kasi nireregalo choknat. So, nagpapanggap lang yon ng tsokolate. So, kidding aside. So, the mindset, based on that research that we have, should be challenge versus threat. Treat everything as a challenge, and then, if you do so, you know what happens? Your body will respond by the heart pumping more blood, but this time the blood vessels relaxing. And you know what happens when the blood vessels relaxes? Your body cells receive more oxygen from the blood, thereby making you feel refreshed and positive. Hindi mahirap gawin yan para sa Pilipino. Mahilig tayong kumain eh. Diba? May pinanganak, may pakain. May ikinasal, may pakain. May namatay na, may pakain pa rin. Okay? So the key is choose what you eat. Choose something that would induce the release of your happy hormone, oxytocin. And you'll get through it. Okay? I believe you can. So umpisahan mo lang ngayon. Wag choknat ha.
Thank you. And speaking of that, no, just another question, practical wise naman, in terms of taking the exam, do you recommend, speaking of food, no, may mga dapat ba kaming iwasan na food bago mag-exam or mga dapat ritual na gawin?
Okay, thank you for that question. Number 1, may i-recommend ako ha, This is actually a gym supplement that I discovered, and most of the students I mentored eventually end up becoming top-notchers because of this thing, but I'm sharing it. Okay, I accidentally discovered, it's called, you can surf the internet, it's called Psychotic. Okay, it's actually, yeah, it's a supplement that I use sa gym para hindi magkaroon ng muscle aches. So it's like half teaspoon to 1 glass of water which I drink. Then after drinking that several days, ang side effect sa akin, naging bangag ako sa pagbabasa. Okay. Yung tipong gusto ko pang magbasa, gusto ko pang magsagot. Then I shared it to my students, especially my students from UP. Sabi ko, try nyo nga to. Ba't ganito effect sa akin? Ganito din ba effect sa inyo? Di trinay nila. Kasi FDA approved naman. Sir, ganun nga ang effect. Then it comes in different flavors. Strawberry, grapes, apple. So you can buy and try that. It will sustain you. You know the good thing about that? Pag uminom ka ng isang baso sa umaga, hala, kahit alas 7 na ng gabi nag-i-exam ka pa, hindi ka papagod.
Wow.
You know? It actually serves to build your mental stamina. Now, that's also one thing I'd like to focus on, because in our local licensure, we are just given one standard schedule. In international licensure, you are being asked to choose either morning or afternoon ng schedule mo. Why is that so? Because cognitive theorists have found out that there are people, 55% of us, are morning test takers. So may mga tao na 55% best mag-work ang mind nila sa umaga. Yung 27% best mag-work yung utak nila sa hapon. At yung remaining 18% could fluctuate. Kaya ang sinasabi ng cognitive theories, kaya dalawa ang schedule ng exam sa international test. Sa isang araw, isang umaga, isang hapon. Ina-acknowledge niya na may mga tao mas madaling mag-exam sa umaga, may mga tao mas madaling mag-exam sa hapon. Pero, once again, tayong mga hindi natin nalalaman yon, we schedule our test out of convenience. Umaga na lang, hapon na lang. You know, I had one student. She kept failing her exam in the States for 2 years. And then I said, okay, let me do an assessment. And then after we did an assessment, sabi ko, when are you scheduling your test? Is it in the morning or is it in the afternoon? Sabi niya, sir, kasi lagi ako nauubusan ng ng morning exams eh. So afternoon ko ni-schedule. Sabi ko, that's where the problem was. The problem was, you are a morning person and you took the test in the afternoon where your brain is no longer having the level of energy that it had in the morning. So sabi ko, if you would allow me, baguhin natin exam mo. So gawin nating morning and then take the test in this location. And sabi niya, sir, I fully trust you. This has been 9 years. I kept failing my test. Okay. So she took the test and then after that, after 3 days, she passed. And then sabi niya sa akin, ito lang pala, 9 na taon ko in-spelling. What's wrong with me? Why I kept failing my test? Because we fail to acknowledge what cognitive theories are telling us. And sometimes, hindi tayo pinalaki sa ganong kultura. Kasi sa Pilipinas, we don't have a choice. Kung ano sinabi schedule, doon ka mag-take ng test. In international testing, you choose your schedule, whether you're taking it in the morning or taking it in the afternoon. That's what matters. Okay? Okay. So, the most important thing is know yourself first and foremost. You have to know what works for you. You have to have a mentor who will assist you to grow as a person. And honestly, modesty aside, I have had the opportunity to mentor various professionals from various countries. Okay? Meron pang India na 2 taon na hindi na pumapasa. I never gave up on them. I never gave up until our agreement is that you leave my mentorship passing your test. That's a commitment that we keep. And that's very important. Kaya kailangan may patience ka. Okay? Okay. I hope I was able to help out with the answers.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I'm afraid we are running out of time. We do have more questions pa, pero that's all the time that we have for now. Sir, may nagtatanong din ulit ano daw yung iniinom. So they can rewatch again this one.
Okay, type ko na lang dito sa chat and then you can actually tell them. Okay.
Yes, and it will be re-uploaded naman po na sa ating Facebook page. So watch ulit yung part na yun.
Now this is FDA approved naman. Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sir Rey Gapuz. There you have it, guys. That concludes our pep talk for today. And in behalf of the FEU Career and Placement Office, Sir Rey Gapuz, thank you so much for your time. You're so generous. Information overload. Dami naming natutunan po sa inyo. And also to our students, faculty members, and employees, thank you for joining us. We do hope that you've learned a lot from this webinar. I hope you guys will join us again in our future Pep Talk episode. So our next topic is all about online etiquette, adapting to the new social media in the new normal. That will be on September 16, Wednesday. Just check the Career and Placement Office Facebook page from time to time for some updates. And of course, the Career and Placement Office has been very busy with a lot of events. And at this point, we would like to play again the video that was interrupted earlier in the beginning of the program. All right, I think still without the audio. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And I'm sure that you will join us again in our future programs here at the Career Placement Office. Till next time, thank you very much for joining us. Goodbye.